The White House on Maple Street looked like every other house in the quiet Denver neighborhood. Green grass covered the front yard. A swing set sat in the back. 2 cars were parked in the driveway. From the outside, the Miller family seemed to have everything. Robert Miller was 45 years old. He worked as an insurance executive at a big company downtown. He drove a black SUV and wore nice suits to work. His neighbors thought he was a good man. He always waved when he saw them. He kept his yard neat and clean. 3 years ago, Robert had married Jessica Turner. She was 34 years old with blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Jessica worked as a marketing consultant. She was smart and friendly. When she moved into the house on Maple Street, the neighbors welcomed her with homemade cookies and warm smiles. Robert had 2 children from his first marriage. Brandon was 17 years old. He was tall like his father with dark brown hair. Ashley was 15 years old. She had her mother's green eyes and light brown hair. Both children seemed happy to have Jessica as their new stepmother. The family had not always been this way. Robert's first wife, Karen, had died in a terrible car accident 6 years earlier. The children were very young when they lost their mother. Brandon was 11 years old. Ashley was only 9. Robert had to raise them by himself for many years. Being a single father was hard for Robert. He worked long hours at his job. He had to cook dinner and help with homework. He had to take the children to school and pick them up. Some nights he felt very tired and alone. The neighbors on Maple Street remembered those difficult years. Mrs. Patterson lived next door. She was an older woman with gray hair who baked cookies for the neighborhood children. She often saw Robert looking stressed and worried. He was trying so hard, Mrs. Patterson said later. The poor man was doing everything by himself. The children needed their mother, but she was gone. Robert met Jessica at a work conference in Chicago. She was giving a presentation about marketing strategies. Robert sat in the front row and listened to every word. After her speech, he walked up to introduce himself. She was so confident and smart. Robert told his friends later. I knew right away that she was special. Jessica and Robert started dating, slowly. They talked on the phone every night. They met for dinner on weekends. Robert was careful because he had his children to think about. He did not want to bring someone into their lives who would hurt them. When Jessica first met Brandon and Ashley, everyone was nervous. Robert took them all to a pizza restaurant on a Saturday afternoon. Brandon ordered pepperoni pizza. Ashley wanted cheese pizza. Jessica smiled and talked to both children about school and their hobbies. She seemed really nice. Ashley told her best friend Emma later. She asked about my art class and remembered that I liked to draw horses. Brandon was more careful about trusting Jessica. He was older and remembered his mother better, but Jessica was patient with him. She did not try to replace his mother. She just wanted to be his friend. The wedding was small and beautiful. It took place in the backyard of the house on Maple Street. Brandon walked Jessica down the aisle because her own father lived far away. Ashley was the flower girl. She wore a pink dress and scattered rose petals on the ground. All the neighbors came to the wedding. Mrs. Patterson brought a chocolate cake. The mailman Tom Wilson came with his wife. Everyone was happy for the new family. They thought Robert deserved to find love again. After the wedding, Jessica moved all her things into the house. She had her own furniture and pictures. She put some of her books on the shelves. She hung her artwork on the walls. The house started to feel different, but everyone tried to adjust. Jessica wanted to be a good stepmother. She learned to cook the foods that Brandon and Ashley liked. She helped Ashley with her math homework. She drove Brandon to soccer practice when Robert was working late. She tried very hard to fit into their family. The children's school teachers noticed that Jessica came to parent conferences. She sat next to Robert and asked questions about their grades. She volunteered to help with the school carnival. She seemed like a caring stepmother who wanted to be involved. At Brandon's high school, his guidance counselor, Ms. Johnson, was impressed with Jessica. She really cared about his future, Ms. Johnson remembered. She asked about college applications and what classes he should take. She wanted him to succeed. Ashley's art teacher, Mr. Davis, also had good things to say about Jessica. She came to every art show, he said. She was so proud of Ashley's drawings. She even bought special art supplies for Ashley to use at home. The neighbors saw the family doing normal things together. They went to the grocery store on Saturday mornings. They had barbecues in their backyard during the summer. They put up Christmas lights every December. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Robert felt happy for the first time in years. He had a wife who loved him. His children seemed to like Jessica. His house felt like a home again instead of just a place where 3 sad people lived. But happiness can be complicated. Sometimes what looks perfect on the outside is very different on the inside. Sometimes people hide their true feelings behind smiles and polite words. Sometimes the problems are so small at first that no one notices them growing bigger. The Miller family looked like they had solved all their problems. They looked like a success story about a man who found love again, and children who gained a caring stepmother. The neighbors on Maple Street thought they were lucky to live next to such a nice family. Nobody knew that underneath the perfect surface, something dark was beginning to grow. Nobody could see the small cracks that were starting to form in the foundation of their happiness. Nobody realized that the perfect family on Maple Street was not as perfect as it seemed. The trouble started small, like most trouble does. It began with little things that seemed unimportant at the time. The first sign of trouble came 6 months after the wedding. Ashley was sitting in her bedroom doing homework when she heard Jessica talking to Robert downstairs. Jessica was speaking quietly, but Ashley could hear every word. "The children need more structure," Jessica said to Robert. "They come and go as they please. Ashley leaves her art supplies everywhere. Brandon never cleans his room." Robert's voice was softer. Ashley had to listen very carefully to hear him. "They're good kids, Jessica. They just need time to adjust." "It's been 6 months," Jessica replied. "At some point they need to follow the rules of this house." Ashley felt her stomach twist into a knot. She had never thought of her own home as having rules she needed to follow. This was the house where she had lived with her mother and father. This was where she had learned to walk and say her first words. The next morning at breakfast, Jessica made an announcement. "From now on, we're going to have family dinner every night at 6 o'clock, she said. "Everyone needs to be at the table on time." Brandon looked up from his cereal. "What if I have soccer practice?" "You can eat when you get home," Jessica answered. "Family time is important." Robert nodded and smiled. "I think that's a great idea," he said. "We should spend more time together as a family." Ashley pushed her toast around on her plate. She did not feel hungry anymore. Something about the way Jessica said family time made her feel like an outsider in her own home. At school that day, Ashley's best friend Emma noticed that she seemed sad. They were sitting together at lunch in the cafeteria. Ashley was not eating her sandwich. "What's wrong?" Emma asked. "You look upset about something." Ashley did not know how to explain her feelings. "Jessica is making new rules at home," she said finally. "Everything feels different now." Emma had met Jessica several times. She thought Jessica seemed nice. "Maybe she's just trying to help," Emma suggested. "My mom makes lots of rules too." "But your mom is your real mom," Ashley said quietly. "Jessica is not my mom. She's just married to my dad." That afternoon, Ashley came home from school to find Jessica rearranging the living room. Jessica had moved the couch to a different wall. She had taken down some family pictures and put up new ones. "Where are the pictures of my mom?" Ashley asked. Jessica looked up from hanging a new painting. "I put them in your father's bedroom," she said. "I thought it would be nice to update the living room with some fresh decorations." Ashley felt tears starting to form in her eyes. The pictures of her mother had been in the living room for as long as she could remember. Now they were hidden away in a bedroom where visitors would never see them. "Can we put one picture back?" Ashley asked. "Just one small one?" Jessica sighed and set down her hammer. "Ashley, I understand this is hard for you, but this is my home, now too. I should be able to decorate it the way I like." That night at dinner, Ashley barely spoke. Robert tried to make conversation about everyone's day. Brandon talked about soccer practice. Jessica talked about her work projects. Ashley just moved her food around on her plate. "Ashley, you're very quiet tonight." Robert said. How was school? Ashley looked at her father. She wanted to tell him about the pictures. She wanted to explain how strange it felt to see their living room looking so different. But Jessica was sitting right there, smiling and waiting for her answer. School was fine, Ashley said. Brandon was having his own problems with Jessica. She had started doing his laundry without asking him. When he went to get his favorite shirt, he found that she had thrown it away. It had holes in it, Jessica explained when Brandon asked about the shirt. I bought you some new clothes instead. The new clothes were nice, but they were not the clothes that Brandon liked to wear. Jessica had chosen polo shirts and khaki pants. Brandon preferred t-shirts and jeans. Can I pick out my own clothes? Brandon asked. Of course, Jessica said. But I think you should dress more nicely. You're almost 18 years old. You need to look more mature. Brandon felt frustrated. He had been picking out his own clothes for years. His father had never complained about the way he dressed. Now suddenly his clothes were not good enough. At school, Brandon's grades started to slip. His English teacher, Mrs. Roberts, noticed that he seemed distracted in class. He was not turning in his homework on time. Is everything okay at home? Mrs. Roberts asked Brandon after class one day. Brandon did not know what to say. He could not explain that his stepmother was slowly changing everything about his life. He could not say that he felt like a stranger in his own house. Everything is fine, Brandon lied, but everything was not fine. Jessica had started going through his backpack to check his homework. She looked at his grades online every day. She made comments about his friends. Tyler seems like a bad influence, Jessica told Robert one evening. Brandon's grades have gotten worse since he started spending time with him. Tyler had been Brandon's best friend since middle school. They played video games together and studied for tests together. Tyler's mother thought Brandon was a good boy who worked hard in school. Robert trusted Jessica's judgment. Maybe you should spend less time with Tyler, he told Brandon. Brandon felt like his world was getting smaller and smaller. First his clothes, then his grades, now his friends. Jessica seemed to have an opinion about everything he did. The worst part was that Robert always took Jessica's side. When Brandon tried to explain his feelings, Robert would say, Jessica is just trying to help you succeed. When Ashley complained about the family pictures being moved, Robert said, Jessica has the right to decorate our home. The children began to feel like their father loved Jessica more than he loved them. They felt like outsiders in the house where they had grown up. They felt like Jessica was slowly erasing their mother's memory, and their father was letting her do it. Late at night, Brandon and Ashley would whisper to each other in the hallway between their bedrooms. They talked about how different their father seemed now. They talked about missing their mother more than ever. Sometimes I wish Jessica would just go away, Ashley whispered one night. Me too, Brandon whispered back. Neither of them knew that. Their quiet wish would eventually become something much darker and more dangerous. 1 year after Jessica moved into the house on Maple Street, the small problems had become big problems. Brandon was now 18 years old and finishing his senior year of high school. Ashley was 16 and struggling with her grades. Both children felt like prisoners in their own home. The breaking point came on a cold Tuesday morning in March. Brandon had been caught smoking behind the school gymnasium. His principal, Mr. Davis, called the house to report what had happened. Jessica answered the phone. She listened to the principal explain that Brandon was suspended for 3 days. When she hung up the phone, her face was red with anger. Robert needs to know about this immediately, Jessica said to herself. She called Robert at his office. Robert was in the middle of an important meeting, but he took Jessica's call anyway. Brandon was caught smoking at school, Jessica told him. He's suspended for 3 days. Robert felt disappointed and embarrassed. Brandon had never been in serious trouble before. I'll talk to him when I get home, Robert said. Talking is not enough anymore, Jessica replied. This boy needs real consequences. He needs discipline. That evening, the family sat around the dinner table in silence. Brandon knew he was in trouble. Ashley could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Robert set down his fork and looked at his son. Jessica told me what happened at school today, he said. I'm very disappointed in you. Brandon stared at his plate. It was just one cigarette, he said quietly. I wasn't even smoking it. I was just holding it for a friend. Don't lie to me, Robert said, his voice getting louder. The principal saw you smoking with his own eyes. Jessica leaned forward in her chair. Robert, I think Brandon needs more than just a lecture. He needs to learn that his actions have serious consequences. What do you suggest? Robert asked. Jessica had been thinking about this all day. I think Brandon should go to military school, she said. He needs structure and discipline. He needs to learn respect. The room went completely silent. Brandon looked up from his plate with shock in his eyes. Ashley's mouth fell open. Military school? Brandon said. You want to send me away from home? It's not about sending you away, Jessica explained. It's about helping you become a responsible adult. Military school will teach you discipline and respect. Robert was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his son, then at his wife. Maybe Jessica is right, he said finally. Maybe you do need more structure in your life. Brandon could not believe what he was hearing. His own father was agreeing to send him away from home. His own father was choosing Jessica over him. Dad, please, Brandon said. I promise I won't get in trouble again. I'll do better in school. I'll follow all the rules. But Robert had already made up his mind. We'll start looking at military schools this weekend, he said. Brandon stood up from the table so fast that his chair fell backward. I can't believe you're doing this to me, he said. His voice was shaking with anger and hurt. Mom would never have sent me away. Don't bring your mother into this, Robert said sharply. Your mother is not here. Jessica is my wife now, and we make decisions together. Brandon ran upstairs to his room and slammed the door. Ashley sat at the table with tears in her eyes. She could not believe her father was going to send Brandon away. Can I be excused? Ashley asked quietly. Yes, Robert said, but think about what happened here tonight. Think about how your actions affect the whole family. Ashley went upstairs and knocked on Brandon's door. She could hear him throwing things around his room. She knocked again. Go away, Brandon said. It's me, Ashley whispered. It's your sister. Brandon opened the door. His eyes were red from crying. Ashley had never seen her big brother cry before. I can't go to military school, Brandon said. I can't leave you here alone with her. Ashley hugged her brother. Maybe Dad will change his mind, she said. No, Brandon said. He won't change his mind. He does whatever Jessica tells him to do now. That night, Ashley could not sleep. She kept thinking about Brandon leaving home. She kept thinking about being alone in the house with Jessica and their father. The thought made her feel scared and angry. She got out of bed and went to Brandon's room. She found him sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen. What are you doing? Ashley asked. Looking up information about military schools, Brandon said. Dad is serious about this. Jessica is serious about this. Ashley looked at the computer screen. She saw pictures of boys in uniforms marching in straight lines. She saw pictures of boys doing push-ups and climbing over walls. That looks terrible, Ashley said. It is terrible, Brandon agreed. And once I'm gone, Jessica will have complete control over Dad. She'll have complete control over this house. Ashley felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? I mean, she's been planning this all along, Brandon said. She married Dad to get his money and his house. She wants us out of the way. That's not true, Ashley said, but even as she said it, she wondered if Brandon might be right. Brandon turned to look at his sister. Think about it, Ashley. She moved our mom's pictures. She threw away my clothes. She made new rules. She's trying to erase us from this family. Ashley thought about all the changes Jessica had made. She thought about how different their father acted now. She thought about how alone she would feel with Brandon gone. What can we do? Ashley asked. Brandon was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he said finally, but I'm not going to let her destroy our family. Neither Brandon nor Ashley slept much that night. They both lay in their beds thinking about military school and Jessica and their father, who seemed like a different person now. They both thought about their mother, who was buried in the cemetery across town. They wondered what she would think about Jessica sending Brandon away. They wondered what she would do if she were still alive. As the sun came up on Wednesday morning, both children knew that something had to change. They could not let Jessica send Brandon away. They could not let her take complete control of their family. But they did not know yet how far they would go to stop her. 3 weeks had passed since the military school conversation. Robert had visited 2 different military schools with Jessica. They had picked one in Arizona that would take Brandon after he graduated from high school in June. Brandon felt like he was living in a nightmare that he could not wake up from. Every day brought him closer to being sent away from his home and his sister. Every day Jessica seemed more confident and controlling. On Friday afternoon, Robert came home with more bad news. He sat Brandon and Ashley down in the living room for a family meeting. "I've made a decision about our will," Robert announced. Jessica sat beside him on the couch, holding his hand. Ashley felt her stomach drop. She had heard her parents talking about wills before her mother died. She knew that a will decided who got money and property when someone died. "I'm updating my will to include Jessica as my main beneficiary," Robert continued. "If something happens to me, Jessica will inherit the house and most of my money." Brandon stared at his father in shock. "What about us?" he asked. "What about me and Ashley?" "You'll both get money for college," Robert explained. "But Jessica is my wife now. She should inherit the house and the rest of my assets." Ashley felt like she was going to be sick. "But this was Mom's house too," she said. "She lived here, she decorated it, she planted the flowers in the garden." Jessica squeezed Robert's hand. "Ashley, I understand this is hard for you, but your father and I are planning our future together. We need to make practical decisions." "What if Jessica dies first?" Brandon asked. "What happens then?" Robert looked uncomfortable. "Well, then everything would go to you and Ashley." Brandon and Ashley looked at each other. They both understood what their father was really saying. As long as Jessica was alive, she would control their family's money and property. She would be the most important person in their father's life. That night, Ashley knocked on Brandon's bedroom door. When he opened it, she could see that he had been crying again. "I can't take this anymore," Ashley said. "She's ruining our family." Brandon let his sister into his room. They sat on his bed and talked quietly so their father and Jessica would not hear them. "She planned all of this," Brandon said. "She married Dad for his money. Now she's getting rid of us so she can have everything." "What if we tell Dad the truth about how we feel?" Ashley suggested. Brandon shook his head. "He won't listen. He thinks Jessica is perfect. He thinks we're just bratty kids who don't want to grow up." Ashley was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised even herself. "What if Jessica wasn't here anymore?" Brandon looked at his sister. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if something happened to Jessica?" Ashley said. "Then Dad would be ours again. Our family would go back to the way it was before." Brandon felt a strange feeling in his chest. Part of him was shocked that his sister would say such a thing, but another part of him felt excited by the idea. "You mean like an accident?" Brandon asked quietly. Ashley nodded. "Like an accident." They talked for 2 more hours that night. They talked about how much they missed their mother. They talked about how different their father was now. They talked about military school and the will and feeling like strangers in their own home. By the time Ashley went back to her room, they had made a terrible decision. They decided that Jessica needed to have an accident. The next morning was Saturday. Robert left early to play golf with his friends from work. He would not be back until Sunday evening. Jessica was alone in the house with Brandon and Ashley. Jessica noticed that both children seemed different that morning. They were polite and helpful. Brandon offered to help with the dishes after breakfast. Ashley asked if she could vacuum the living room. "You two are being very nice today," Jessica said. "I'm proud of you for being so responsible." Ashley smiled at her stepmother. We've been thinking about what Dad said yesterday, about planning for the future. That's very mature of you, Jessica replied. Your father will be happy to hear that. Brandon spent the morning in the garage, looking through boxes of old medication. After his mother died, Robert had kept all of her prescription bottles. Brandon found sleeping pills and pain medication and anxiety medicine. Ashley spent the morning researching on the computer in the family room. She looked up information about drowning and accidents. She learned that drowning was one of the most common types of accidental death. At lunchtime, the three of them ate sandwiches together in the kitchen. Jessica talked about her plans to redecorate Brandon's room after he left for military school. She wanted to turn it into an office for her work. That's a good idea, Brandon said. Ashley nodded in agreement. Jessica was pleased that the children were finally accepting the changes in their family. She thought maybe they were finally growing up and learning to adapt. That evening, Jessica made dinner for the three of them. She cooked spaghetti with meat sauce, which was one of Ashley's favorite meals. They ate together at the dining room table and talked about school and work. After dinner, Jessica went to the living room to watch television. She was tired from a busy week and looked forward to relaxing on Saturday night. Would you like some tea? Ashley asked. I could make you a nice cup of herbal tea. Jessica smiled. That would be lovely, Ashley. Thank you. Ashley went to the kitchen and put water in the kettle. While the water was heating, she opened the cabinet where Jessica kept her sleeping medication. Jessica had been taking sleeping pills since she married Robert because she said the new house was too noisy. Ashley took 3 sleeping pills out of the bottle. She also took some of the old pain medication that had belonged to her mother. She crushed all the pills into a fine powder using the back of a spoon. When the water was ready, Ashley made a cup of chamomile tea. She stirred the powdered medication into the tea until it dissolved completely. The tea looked normal and smelled normal. Brandon was waiting in the hallway when Ashley carried the tea to the living room. They looked at each other for just a moment. Ashley felt scared, but she also felt determined. Here's your tea, Ashley said, handing the cup to Jessica. Jessica was watching a movie on television. Thank you, sweetie, she said. This is very thoughtful of you. Jessica drank the tea slowly while she watched her movie. Brandon and Ashley sat in the room with her, pretending to watch television too. Really, they were watching Jessica and waiting to see what would happen. After about 20 minutes, Jessica started to yawn. I'm getting sleepy, she said. I think I'll go to bed soon. After another 10 minutes, Jessica's head started to nod. She was having trouble keeping her eyes open. Are you feeling okay? Ashley asked, trying to sound concerned. I feel very tired, Jessica said. Her words were starting to sound slurred. I think I need to lie down. Jessica tried to stand up from the couch, but her legs felt weak and shaky. She sat back down and put her hand to her head. Something's wrong, Jessica said. She was starting to panic. I don't feel right. Brandon stood up. Maybe you should get some fresh air, he suggested. The hot tub might help you feel better. Jessica was too confused and sleepy to think clearly. The medication was making her mind foggy. Brandon and Ashley helped her walk to the back door. The hot tub was already turned on and ready. The water was warm and bubbling. Jessica sat on the edge and put her feet in the water. This does feel good, she said, but her words were very slurred now. She was having trouble staying awake. Within a few minutes, Jessica slumped forward into the hot tub. The warm water covered her face. She was too drugged to lift her head up or call for help. Brandon and Ashley stood by the hot tub and watched their stepmother drown. They could have saved her, but they chose not to. They watched until she stopped moving completely. Then they went back into the house and waited until morning to call for help. They practiced what they would say to the police. They planned to act shocked and sad when they found Jessica's body. Neither of them slept that night. They had killed the woman who had married their father. They had gotten their revenge. But they did not feel happy about it. They felt scared and sick and sorry. But it was too late to change what they had done. Jessica was dead, and their lives would never be the same again. Sunday morning came too quickly for Brandon and Ashley. They had spent the night sitting in the living room, staring at the television without really watching it. Neither of them had slept. Neither of them had eaten anything since dinner the night before. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Ashley took a deep breath and picked up the telephone. Her hands were shaking as she dialed 911. 991. "What's your emergency?" the operator asked. Ashley made her voice sound panicked and scared. "My stepmother's in the hot tub and she's not moving," she said. "I think something is wrong with her." "Is she breathing?" the operator asked. "I don't know," Ashley replied. "She's face down in the water. I'm afraid to touch her." "We're sending help right away," the operator said. "Stay on the line with me." Within 5 minutes, the first police car arrived at the house on Maple Street. Officer Johnson was the first person through the front door. Brandon and Ashley were sitting on the couch holding each other and crying. "Where is your stepmother?" Officer Johnson asked. Brandon pointed toward the back door. "She's in the hot tub," he said. "We found her this morning when we came downstairs." Officer Johnson went outside and saw Jessica floating face down in the hot tub. He could tell immediately that she was dead. Her skin was pale and her body was cold. Soon more police officers arrived. Then the paramedics came, even though it was clear that Jessica could not be saved. Detective Maria Rodriguez arrived 30 minutes later to take charge of the investigation. Detective Rodriguez was 45 years old, with black hair and sharp brown eyes. She had been solving crimes for 20 years. She was known for being very careful and paying attention to small details. The first thing Detective Rodriguez noticed was how clean everything looked. The deck around the hot tub was neat and tidy. There were no signs of a struggle or an accident. The second thing she noticed was how calm Brandon and Ashley seemed. They were crying and acting upset, but something about their behavior seemed strange to her. "When did you last see Jessica alive?" Detective Rodriguez asked the children. "Last night after dinner," Brandon answered. "She said she was going to watch television and then go to bed." "What time did you find her this morning?" the detective asked. "Around 8:30, Ashley replied. "We came downstairs to get breakfast and saw her through the back door." Detective Rodriguez wrote down everything they said. She asked many more questions about the night before and the morning when they found Jessica. "Did Jessica have any medical problems?" she asked. "Was she taking any medication?" "She took sleeping pills sometimes," Ashley said. "She said the house was too noisy when she was trying to sleep." "Did she drink alcohol last night?" Detective Rodriguez asked. Brandon and Ashley looked at each other. "I don't think so," Brandon said. "She doesn't drink alcohol very often." Detective Rodriguez noticed the look that passed between the brother and sister. In her experience, guilty people often communicated with their eyes when they were trying to keep their stories straight. The detective spent 2 hours at the house that morning. She took pictures of everything. She looked at Jessica's bedroom and the kitchen and the living room. She made notes about what she saw. While Detective Rodriguez was working, the medical examiner arrived to take Jessica's body away. Dr. Patricia Chen was a small woman with gray hair who had been doing autopsies for 30 years. "I'll have preliminary results tomorrow," Dr. Chen told the detective. "But I can tell you right now that this doesn't look like a typical drowning." "What do you mean?" Detective Rodriguez asked. "Drowning victims usually have signs of struggle," Dr. Chen explained. "They have water in their lungs and foam around their mouth. This woman looks too peaceful for someone who drowned accidentally." That afternoon, Robert Miller came home from his golf trip. When he saw the police cars in his driveway, he knew something terrible had happened. Brandon and Ashley ran to their father and hugged him. They were crying real tears now because they were scared about what they had done. "Jessica is dead, Dad," Ashley sobbed. "We found her in the hot tub this morning." Robert felt like someone had punched him in the chest. He could not breathe, he could not think. His wife was dead, and he had been playing golf while it happened. Detective Rodriguez talked to Robert for an hour. She asked him about his marriage to Jessica and whether they had any problems. She asked about money and life insurance and wills. "Jessica and I were very happy," Robert said through his tears. "We never fought about anything important. She loved my children like they were her own." The detective noticed that Brandon and Ashley looked uncomfortable when their father said Jessica loved them. She made a note to ask them more questions about their relationship with their stepmother. On Monday morning, Dr. Chen called Detective Rodriguez with the autopsy results. Jessica Miller did not die from drowning, Dr. Chen said. She died from an overdose of sleeping medication and pain pills. How much medication was in her system? Detective Rodriguez asked. Enough to kill someone twice her size, Dr. Chen replied. This was not an accident. Someone gave her a lethal dose of drugs. Detective Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. Jessica Miller had been murdered. Now she had to figure out who killed her and why. The detective's first suspects were Brandon and Ashley. They were the only people in the house with Jessica. On Saturday night, they had access to medication. They had found the body. But Detective Rodriguez needed more evidence before she could make any arrests. She needed to prove that the children had killed their stepmother. She started by searching the house more carefully. In Ashley's bedroom, she found a diary hidden under the mattress. The diary was full of angry entries about Jessica. I hate the way Jessica looks at me, one entry said. I hate the way she has changed our house. I wish she would just disappear forever. In Brandon's room, the detective found internet search history on his computer. He had been researching information about drowning and sleeping medication. He had also looked up information about wills and inheritance laws. Detective Rodriguez also found the empty medication bottles in the garage. Fingerprints on the bottles matched both Brandon and Ashley, but the strongest evidence came from the teacup that Ashley had used to serve Jessica the poisoned tea. The cup had been washed, but traces of the sleeping medication were still detectable. On Wednesday morning, Detective Rodriguez arrested Brandon and Ashley Miller for the murder of their stepmother. Both children were taken to the police station in handcuffs. Robert Miller could not believe what was happening. His wife was dead, and now his children were being charged with killing her. There has to be some mistake, Robert told the detective. My children would never hurt Jessica. They're good kids. But Detective Rodriguez had enough evidence to prove that Brandon and Ashley had planned and carried out Jessica's murder. The Daikyo, good kids from the perfect family on Maple Street, had become cold-blooded killers. The case that had started as an accidental drowning had become a murder investigation. The perfect family that everyone admired had been hiding a terrible secret. Soon, the whole country would know about the Miller family and the night that changed everything forever. The trial of Brandon and Ashley Miller began 6 months after Jessica's death. The courthouse in downtown Denver was packed with reporters and curious people who wanted to see the children who had killed their stepmother. Brandon was now 19 years old. Because he was an adult, he was tried in regular court with the possibility of going to prison for life. Ashley was still 17, so her case was handled in juvenile court. The prosecutor was a woman named Jennifer Walsh. She was 38 years old with red hair and a reputation for being tough on criminals. She had never lost a murder case. These children planned and carried out the cold-blooded murder of Jessica Miller, Prosecutor Walsh told the jury. They killed her because they were selfish and greedy. They wanted their father's money, and Jessica was standing in their way. Brandon's lawyer was a man named Mark Stevens. He was 52 years old and specialized in defending young people who committed serious crimes. Brandon Miller is not a killer, Lawyer Stevens told the jury. He is a confused and hurt teenager who made a terrible mistake. He lost his mother when he was young, and he could not handle losing his father to a new woman. Ashley's lawyer was a woman named Carol Thompson. She was 45 years old and had been defending children in court for 15 years. Ashley Miller was manipulated by her older brother, Lawyer Thompson argued. She was a scared 16-year-old girl who followed Brandon's lead because she was afraid of being alone. The trial lasted for 3 weeks. Many people testified about the Miller family and what had happened on the night Jessica died. Robert Miller was the most important witness. He walked slowly to the witness stand wearing a black suit. He looked much older than his 48 years. His hair had turned gray and his face was lined with worry and sadness. I love Jessica very much, Robert testified. She made me happy after years of being alone. She was good to my children even when they were difficult. Robert's voice broke when he talked about finding out that his own children had killed his wife. I lost Jessica, but I also lost Brandon and Ashley, he said. They will always be my children, but I can never trust them again. They destroyed our family. Many people in the courtroom were crying when Robert finished testifying. Even some of the jurors had tears in their eyes. Detective Rodriguez testified about finding the evidence that proved Brandon and Ashley were guilty. She explained how the children had planned the murder and carried it out. Dr. Chen testified about the autopsy and the large amount of drugs in Jessica's system. She explained that Jessica had been unconscious when she drowned in the hot tub. Signed D. Children's teachers and friends testified about changes they had noticed in Brandon and Ashley's behavior. Several people said the children had seemed angry and withdrawn after Jessica married their father. Brandon's best friend Tyler testified that Brandon had talked about hating Jessica and wishing she would go away. Ashley's friend Emma testified that Ashley had said she felt like Jessica was trying to replace her mother. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor, testified about seeing the family together. She said she had noticed tension between Jessica and the children, but she never thought it would lead to violence. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when Ashley decided to testify in her own defense. She walked to the witness stand wearing a blue dress and looking much younger than her 17 years. I never wanted to hurt Jessica, Ashley said in a quiet voice. I just wanted my family to be the way it was before she came. I wanted my dad to love me the most again. Ashley cried as she explained how she had felt replaced by Jessica. She talked about missing her mother and feeling like Jessica was trying to erase her mother's memory. Brandon said we had to do something to save our family, Ashley testified. He said if Jessica was gone, everything would go back to normal. I believed him because I was scared and sad. Brandon chose not to testify in his own defense. His lawyer advised him to stay quiet because anything he said could be used against him. The jury deliberated for 2 days before reaching their verdicts. Everyone in the courthouse held their breath as the verdicts were read. Brandon Miller was found guilty of first-degree murder. Because he was an adult and had planned the crime, he was sentenced to life in prison. He would be eligible for parole after serving 25 years. Ashley Miller was found guilty of second-degree murder in juvenile court. Because she was younger and had cooperated with the police, she received a lighter sentence. She was sent to juvenile detention until her 21st birthday, followed by 5 years of probation. The different sentences caused controversy. Some people thought both children should receive the same punishment because they had committed the same crime. Other people thought Ashley deserved a lighter sentence because she was younger and had been influenced by her brother. Robert Miller made a statement after the sentencing. He stood outside the courthouse with his lawyer and spoke to the reporters who had been following the case. I have lost everything, Robert said. I lost my first wife in a car accident. I lost my second wife to murder. Now I have lost my children to the justice system. Jessica did not deserve to die. She was a good woman who loved our family. Robert sold the house on Maple Street and moved to a different state. He could not bear to live in the place where his wife had been murdered by his own children. The Miller case became famous across the country. Television shows and magazines wrote about the perfect family that had hidden such dark secrets. People debated whether the children were evil killers or damaged victims of their own grief and jealousy. 5 years have passed since Jessica's death. Ashley Miller was released from juvenile detention on her 21st birthday. She now lives in a halfway house and works at a grocery store. She has not spoken to her father or brother since the trial. Brandon Miller remains in prison. He spends his days in a small cell, thinking about the choices that destroyed his life. He has written letters to his father asking for forgiveness, but Robert has never replied. Jessica Miller was buried in the cemetery where Brandon and Ashley's mother was also buried. Her grave is marked with a simple headstone that says, "Beloved wife." Robert visits the grave every year on the anniversary of her death. The house on Maple Street was eventually sold to a new family. The new owners painted it a different color and planted new flowers in the garden. They do not know about the tragedy that happened there. Detective Rodriguez retired from the police force 2 years after solving the Miller case. She says it was the saddest case she ever worked on because it involved children killing someone who was supposed to be part of their family. The case serves as a warning about how jealousy and resentment can grow into something deadly if they are not addressed. It shows how quickly a family can be destroyed when trust is broken and love turns to hate. Brandon and Ashley Miller were children who felt replaced and forgotten. Instead of talking to adults about their feelings, they chose violence. Their decision to kill Jessica not only ended her life, but also destroyed their own futures. The perfect family on Maple Street was never perfect at all. Underneath the surface, dangerous emotions were building toward a tragic ending that no one could have imagined. Today, Robert Miller lives alone in a small apartment far from Denver. He keeps pictures of his first wife, Karen, on his dresser, but he has no pictures of Brandon or Ashley. He says he still loves his children, but he cannot forgive them for what they did. The Miller case reminds us that families are complicated and that appearances can be deceiving. It shows us that even children can make choices that change their lives forever. Most importantly, it shows us that murder is never the answer to family problems, no matter how difficult those problems might seem.